Today we're going to go ahead and go through multiplying radicals day 2. Your homework is radicals worksheet number 7. So yesterday we discussed how to multiply radicals. You multiply the coefficients that are in front of the radicals together, and then you multiply the radicands that are under the radicals together, and then you simplify any radical that's left. Today we're going to look at multiplying by using the distributive property. So if we look at this first problem here, we have a 2 out in front, so we want to take 2 times the square root of 2 plus 3 square root of 5. So we're going to go ahead and use that distributive property. So I'm going to take 2 times radical 2. Right now there is no number out in front of radical 2, so these are just going to go together. 2 radical 2. Then I'm going to go ahead and multiply these here. So 2 times 3 radical 5, which will give me 6 radical 5. Now I'm going to look at these. I'm going to see if I can add them. I cannot because they do not have the same number under the radical, so that would just be my answer. Looking at this one, we're going to go ahead and go 6 times 2 radical 7. So the numbers outside get multiplied. So 2 and 6 is 12. 6 times 2 is 12. And then that radical 7 has nothing to be multiplied with, so it's 12 radical 7. Then we're going to go ahead and take that 6. We're going to multiply over here. So 6 and 4 makes negative 24. And then radical 6. We cannot simplify any further. They don't have the same radical, so that is my answer. Now we're going to go ahead and distribute a radical. So we're going to do radical 5. So I'm going to take radical 5 times radical 5, which would give me radical 25. They're both under the radical, so I multiply them together and keep them under the radical. Then I'm going to go ahead and take radical 5 times 3 radical 2. So that 3 is going to stay outside by itself. Radical 5 and radical 2 are going to become radical 10. I can simplify this. Radical 25 is just 5, and then plus 3 radical 10. Okay, so here we get to go into our binomial times a binomial. So this is where you're either going to use the double distribute or the box method, depending on which way you like to and which way is best for you. I like the box method, so what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to split my binomial into 2 terms. So I'm going to have radical 3 and negative 2. And then I'm going to split my other binomial into radical 3 and positive 5. Then I'm going to go ahead and multiply to get the box. So radical 3 and radical 3 make radical 9, which I know is just going to be a positive 3. Radical 3 times 5 is 5 radical 3. Radical 3 times negative 2 is negative 2 radical 3. And radical 2 negative 2 times 5 is negative 10. So I would have 3 plus 5 radical 3 minus 2 radical 3 minus 10. I then have some like terms here. So my radical 3's can go together, and my 3 and negative 10. So I would get negative 7. 5 minus 2 would be plus 3 radical 3 for my final answer. We get to practice again some of the binomial times binomial. So this time I will go ahead and do the double distribute if you'd like, so that you can look at that. So I'm going to do radical 2 times radical 2, which would be radical 4. I'm going to do radical 2 times 4, which is 4 radical 2. Then I'm going to go ahead and switch to my next term. So I'm going to go 3 times radical 2, which is 3 radical 2. And then I'm going to do 3 times 4, which is 12. Hopefully now we're starting to see those simplified. So radical 4 is just going to be a 2. And then I'm looking for any like terms that I may have. So 2 and 12 go together for 14. And then 4 square roots of 2 plus 3 square roots of 2 makes 7 square roots of 2. So I'd get 14 plus 7 square roots of 2. The next one has that square, so we talked about this yesterday. When we have that exponent of a 2, what it means is we are going to multiply something by itself. So here we're squaring this whole inside. So 5 minus 4 square roots of 2. And so we're going to multiply it by itself. Now that I have this written out, it's your choice. You can choose to double distribute. You can choose to use the box method. Whichever way you want, you should get to the same answer. So I'm going to go ahead and double distribute. 5 times 5 is 25. 5 times negative 4 square roots of 2 is negative 20 square roots of 2. I'm going to switch to my other term. So negative 4 square roots of 2 times 5 is negative 20 square roots of 2. And then I'm going to go ahead and multiply this. So negative 4 square roots of 2 times negative 4 square roots of 2. If you need to, you could go ahead and write that out to help you out. So negative 4 times negative 4 is positive 16. 2 times 2 is radical 2, or radical 4, I'm sorry. This becomes a 2, so altogether this whole thing would become a 32. So I'm going to go ahead, put together my numbers, and put together my square roots of 2. So 25 plus 32 makes 57, and then minus 40 square root of 2 for that final answer. The next two problems on this activity are review. So we're going to just go ahead and simplify this radical. So we have 3 times. I'm going to split this up, the square root of 36 and the square root of x to the 24th. The square root of 36 is just 6. The square root of x to the 24th, that's an even exponent. So I'm going to go ahead and divide it by 2. So x to the 12th. 3 times 6 is 18, so I'd get 18x to the 12th. The last one wants us to go ahead and add these radicals. So remember, in order to add radicals, they have to have the same index and the same radicand, the same index and the same number under the radical. We're able to break up radical 8 into radical 4 and radical 2. So this would become 2 radical 2 plus 2 radical 2 from the original problem. When we have the same radical, we're going to keep that radical and we're just going to add or subtract the coefficients. So 2 plus 2 is 4. So my final answer would be 4 radical 2.